Welcome back to Sheffield Live. If you've just joined us, we are discussing Sudan today, the ongoing protest or uprising that is currently happening in the country. And we've got our guest here tonight. For those of you who might have just started watching Sheffield Live or who might have just joined us, we've got Wida Abdullah, who is an activist, a Sudanese activist, of course, living here in Sheffield. And next to Abdullah is Aliyah Adam, who is a student, but also just recently came back from Sudan on a holiday trip. She's a Sudanese, of course, as well. So Chiwe, we were discussing earlier before we went on for the break. I asked Abdullah whether the government were caught off guard, but then Aliyah, I think that's the situation, or that's the answer to it. Yeah. So what's your take on that?
I'm not sure how exactly this panned out, actually. So it could be that they were caught off guard. I've also learned that there are two schools of thought as far as use of the military, because the military has actually played a big role in this particular protest. We've got statistics that Bala will probably look at it a bit on people who've died and stuff like that. But there's also this where scholars are also coming in, they're weighing in. If anything, they were part of the Professional Association of Sudanese people that organized the 25th of December protests. So quite a lot of scholars across the world are coming in to weigh in about the intelligence wing of the government and the army. So there's a thought that whereas in previous years Omar al-Bashir would have had a total grip on both those institutions, there's actually a bit of a fragmentation. So the intelligence unit is not necessarily working in tandem with the army, and there's a bit of suspicion. So I think that's probably an opportunity as well, that saying the Omar al-Bashir camp is thinning out, it's getting smaller, and that's how I see it based on what scholars are saying. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there is because I mean the military-wise, there was war, taking place in Nuba Mountain and Blue Nile and Darfur. So during that war, they grew some militias to support them there. And now they're trying to make them official forces for the country. So these forces now they have I mean, they're in conflict with the armed forces, and also the intelligence. They have a problem also with the military. And 3 days ago they fought in. Military against intelligence in Bor Sudan, which is eastern side of Sudan, Red Sea area. So yeah, they are not organized, and they're yeah.
Picking up on that topic though, those two institutions fighting each other.
Yeah.
Do you think that's an opportunity for the protesters or for activists like you to do what you are doing, to think very soon they will start fighting each other and nobody will be loyal to him anymore?
Yeah, we think so, but we are not depending on the military anyway, because we, since independence we've been coup after coup after coup, and we don't want the military to intervene in the political issues, especially in this revolution. So we are just trying to keep them aside. And till what we are doing now as a tactic, we're just making them tired, and we know the economic is too bad, and they don't have, the fuel to chase us everywhere, wherever we go. So later on, they will give up fighting against the protesters, and then finally, Bashir will fall.
As a young person, how do you feel though, knowing that since you were born, or before you were born, it's been that same president, Omar al-Bashir, and now you are kind of like a grown-up adult now, it's still the same person, and he's still not ready to go?
It's sad, because I remember speaking to my mum and dad, and I was asking them, what was it like before? And it was before it was so much easier, everyone was more happier, the economy was booming. And to think that in my whole lifetime that this has been going on and people have been suffering, and that poverty is just ridiculous, and it's really sad, because taking a country that could prosper, truly prosper, and become so rich, and seeing what it is now, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I can actually see that happening. There's also something else you touched on. You could also speak to it, Wida, at some point. But specifically for you as a young woman of Sudanese heritage, you spoke about something that seems to mark a lot of wars across the African continent, but also in this case we're talking about an uprising, and you're talking about how the women were sort of were quiet about it to start with. The students specifically you were talking about, so they were in the background and they were sort of implored to join the protest by the men. Yeah, and from my understanding of what you said, I might be wrong here, is that they would rather not have participated actively, but they were forced to go out. Again, we have seen a situation today specifically where journalists today, the day that we're recording the show, where journalists from Sudan, within Sudan, are talking about military security apparatus being deployed to different parts of the country, different cities. And in this particular case, there were trucks that were parked in Buri. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah,
Buri, where as an intimidation tactic and also to prevent more protests. So these are state military, and what happened is the officers that have been parked there have been bullying the women as they're going to work today. Is that something you've got to speak to as a young woman?
In Sudanese culture, the country, there's not really much of an allowance for expressing yourself. So with the protests and stuff, like, being a woman in Sudan is kind of hard. There's not a lot of freedom, I would say. Like, to go out is usually, you can go out and you can go to places, but sometimes it's better to go with a man just for protection wise and stuff. And with the university students, like, because they're young girls and they're not like big and tough, and they're not used to fighting and stuff like that, so of course they would have preferred to have stayed in. But being forced to come out was like, it was either coming out or you're going to get hurt, because many females did get hurt, like rocks were thrown and females got like arms broken, legs broken. But in the protests actually happening right now, there's a lot of women starting to step out. There's a lot of women going out. Even if you cover your face or something, women are still going out and they're still speaking on camera and getting other women involved. Like, I think it's come to the point where it's like, whether I'm a woman, a man, young or old, even little kids are going out now as well. Like little 5-year-olds, like, maybe not 5-year-olds, but little 7-year-olds and stuff are actually going out into the streets and they're fighting, and loads of kids have died. Women have died, men have died. It's sad, but people are starting to think, I need to rise up, I need to stand for my country, I need to do something, whether I'm a man, a woman, a child, a grown up, an old person, it don't matter. This is my country, we need to fight for it. So yeah, women are starting to rise up as well now.
Good stuff. Did you have anything you wanted to say to that?
Yeah, I mean, women are really marginalized in Sudan, and that has to do with the ideology, which is the regime believe on it. And it's an Islamic ideology which doesn't allow the women. I mean, they abuse women's rights.
Yeah.
So women are really marginalized in Sudan, but in this revolution, I would say they will constitute like maybe 60%, even there. So like 157 of them are detained right now. So.
Is that women?
Yeah, women. 157 of them are detained.
So how do you feel, though, to see, as I was looking up earlier the country, one thing I noticed was the scholars in Islam in Sudan. They are very influential in the country. And seeing them speak up for the first time, because I was looking at it, and they were asking the government, it is the government's duty to protect civilians. It is the government's duty to look after the protesters. As we talk, or as we are recording today, the official figures, according to the government, 29 people have died since the protest began. but according to independent organizations such as Amnesty International and other organizations, it is in its 40s or above 40s. So how do you feel, though, looking at a very influential organization like the Islamic scholars now coming in, saying, look, the government, you need to protect civilians, you need to look after protesters?
Yeah, but I don't believe it's going to work that way because, you know, the Islamic Brotherhood, they're like a network. They support each other, whatever situation they're in, they support each other. So what we need is like human rights activists who can raise the issues and like, you know, ask United Nations and ask, you know, like big organization to intervene and stretch in Sudan to stop killing.
True, but I'm not interrupting you. Sorry to interrupt you there, but if you look at Omar al-Bashir, he's been found guilty of war crimes, and they are talking of indicting him to The Hague. But that campaign has been going on for ages. But the African Union or some of these African leaders, they're not willing to do that. Do you think just Amnesty International, or organizations like the United Nations, which all of us knows, by the time they intervene, we always say it's rather too late than never, but they always intervene when so many people have died. That is the time they will intervene. They will say, oh, okay, now stop. But the Muslim Brotherhood, being a very influential organization in the country, Omar al-Bashir might listen to them more than what he listens to international organizations like Amnesty International or the United Nations, because he considers those people to be his enemies anyway.
He's already afraid. He's already living kind of in fear of what the people have said. And people have said, when I was there, people told me that apparently he went to go pray at a mosque or something, one of the very big influential ones, and the imam told him, no, you can't pray with these people. Like, he actually kicked him out. So it's starting to be a thing that like the leaders in the Islamic community are resisting him, because they're starting to see, if you're a believer of God, then you are there to fight for the people. And if you can see the people are coming and they're suffering, and this is the reason why, you're not going to really be have an open heart towards this person. Yes, you will love them as a person because they're still like a child of God, but you want to make sure they're accountable for their actions. And a lot of leaders are starting to see that, because they're there for the people, and if the people are not happy, they're not going to be happy as well to see that.
So this,
I mean, like I mean, it was like a week ago that some spiritual leaders, I mean, Islamic leaders, they went to al-Bashir in his house and they talked to him that they must stop killing people, and they talked to him and they come out and they announce it to the Sudanese people. And also the Muslim Brotherhood as a party, they were part of this regime. But when they started killing the people in the first 2 weeks, they decided to come out of the government, and now they are supporting the revolution, and they have, you know, they are supporting the revolution. They are calling their members to join the revolution. So there were like 22 parties who left, you know, the government, and they joined the revolution, and Muslim Brotherhood was one of them. But I'm sure they are not going to listen to them, because one of the things which is complicating, you know, the Sudanese problem is the ICC. So ICC, like, they say they want al-Bashir to
extradite.
But they don't have the tools and the means, you know. They don't know how they can arrest him, and they just make him like, you know, a wounded lion, you know, like they wound him and they leave it for Sudanese people. So he's defending himself now, because if he leaves the power, then he will go to court.
Well, that comes to my point now, because he's cornered. So the only help
he's cornered,
he's having is the Sudanese people. So if the Sudanese people are rising now against him, that means his days might be numbered. So before, like Aliyah mentioned, or yourself, those Muslim scholars or the Muslim Brotherhood were part of the government, you know, but now if they all live in him, do you think there is a pause for him there thinking, oh, my days might be numbered, because he's more worried about the Sudanese people in the country, I believe, than what United Nations or Amnesty International can say outside, because at the end of the day, they can only get hold of him if he's been overthrown, or if he's not in the presidency, I guess.
Yeah.
Because nobody can extradite him when he's in power.
I mean, given that a few years ago, hardly 3 years ago, when he was in South Africa for the African Union Summit, we had the whole lot of the African Union within their power, and South Africa being one of the praised democratic countries now failed to actually extradite him. They had that opportunity. So I think within the African Union, there's probably a situation where we can't. But that brings me to this other situation where I think Sudan, again, stands a bit unique when it comes to Africa, the African continent. Sudan is a country that's considered to, I think when the al-Bashir government itself considers itself to be more of the MENA countries, so Middle East, North Africa countries, whereas as a whole, we see Sudan as being part of sub-Saharan Africa and part of the main Africa. So obviously there's a lot of influence, like you were saying, from the Muslim side of things, and maybe that's the sort of pressure that could come in. But that also just brings us to something else regarding these splits that we have across the continent. Colonial rule, for example, where we were split across tribe, religion, and everything like that, to say we're not the same people. And in Sudan's case, what we've seen in the last week is, I think when you're considered to be Darfurian, it's supposed to be derogatory, and the government, the al-Bashir government, tends to use that a lot. But talk me through what has happened in how people have actually taken that term, regardless of whether they consider themselves to be from the MENA countries. They've owned it and said, yes, we're Darfurians. What does that mean? What's the significance of that?
I mean, this is one of the very, very important things in this revolution. Al-Bashir have been ruling, been using, divide or rule, and they have been dividing the Sudanese people, because Sudan is a really very diverse country. So they've been using tribes against tribes, and the whole, African origin tribes against, the Arab people in North. So they've been using that. But when the revolution started, they have tried, they have tried to identify it as Darfurian rebels, trained some people from Israel, and they come to Sudan, and they are now attacking the Northerners, and they are going to loot their things, and they will kill them, and they will. So, but the people understand it very quickly, and they started you arrogant racist, all the Sudanese are Darfurian.
I feel like clapping for the Sudanese of this. They've done a very good job.
I just to touch on one topic here before we end the show, because we've got about 6 to 7 minutes left. That is solution to this uprising. We've seen uprisings in many countries dubbed as the Arab Springs. Let's say example, Libya. Libya, they had their uprising, but when Gaddafi was killed, we've seen up to now the country is not stable. Things are worse than the way things were before the revolution. Likewise, Egypt, I'm not going to say things are worse, but looking at before al-Sisi came to power, or had they overthrew the Mohammed al-Morsi from the Muslim Brotherhood, things have got worse than when Mubarak was there, Hosni Mubarak, because now they arrest activists, they're killing people, nobody's saying anything. So in terms of Sudan, your uprising that is going on, do you have any agenda for your uprising? And in terms, if you are successful, do you have any person in particular that you think, yes, we're going to put this person, you're going to be our leader, and things will be okay, like Tunisia? Because Tunisia is only the country that has had the uprising that has become successful. But all the others, they've become failed states.
Yeah, it's a really important question. Till now, the Sudanese Professional Association, they're the one who are representing the revolution now. And for Sudan to become to repeat what happened in Egypt or in Libya, I don't think so, because this is a very unique Sudanese revolution. And those who are on the ground, they are very aware of what should happen after this. because most of them, you know, like student, you know, university students, and they are very intellectual, and also they are very clear agenda that Bashir must go with his regime, and then there must be like a transitional government who will set the constitution, and I mean the institution, and all the opposition parties now they are aligned with that, and the other opposition group who were joining the government, and now they come out from the government, and they're.
But how difficult will that be, though? Because you said Bashir has been ruling in a way of divide and rule.
Yeah.
So the country, even though you are united right now for an offspring or for a revolution, you're still not that 100% united. So do you have anyone in particular in mind to say, look, as soon as Bashir goes, this is the person that will come as a transitional government before election comes in, or before election kicks in?
In Sudan, I remember speaking to a woman, she's a scholar, she was saying that there are definitely candidates that they know would be better off suited as being president. I can't remember the names right now, but there is people there that people would be like, you know, this person would be better, this person would be better. So there are options for if the dictatorship government was to come down, we could raise a civil government, and there are people there that we could put up as leaders and have their parties as the main ones. So there are definitely options.
So perhaps to ask that again, based on what she has just said and what you've also just said, so I guess who are the front runners? Do you have names? Do you have a political party? Let's say today al-Bashir says, right, my government and I are done. Who do you have there? What do you have in place?
Yeah, what we have in place, we have the parties, you know, which I mentioned, the opposition parties.
Is it a coalition? Is it an alliance?
Yeah, it's like a coalition.
Okay. And
it includes, you know, the big opposition parties in Sudan. And they have a very good understanding with even the rebel groups. They now they're in one alliance, and they have in one coalition. So like al-Omar party, and we have SPLM North, SLM, and we have almost 22 parties.
So with that alliance, you've got all these candidates, and some of them have actually come from the Muslim Brotherhood, which was in coalition with Omar al-Bashir before. So do you have, so let's say today it happened, have they got an agreement on how, is it just an uprising of commonality right now, and then they'll determine who gets to sit in government afterwards? Or
it's just hypothesis?
I mean, there's a bit conflict between these two, because the opposition parties, which they've been, you know, against the government since the government started, since I mean 1989.
85, okay,
yeah, till now, they have a very clear agenda. But those whom have come out of the government recently, they are supporting the revolution, but they haven't signed, you know, the statement which was made by the other opposition parties.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're supporting the revolution. They're calling their members to join the revolution and to take al-Bashir from power.
Okay, just a quick one to both of you, but briefly, because we've got less than a minute to go. Are you hopeful at all that this revolution will be a successful one? And if it becomes a successful one, are you hopeful for the future?
Yeah, I'm really hopeful. And you know, when al-Bashir came to power, I was 11 years old. So this is the first time since, you know, that time, I feel that Sudan is going to, this is a turning point in our history.
Okay. And yourself, Alia?
Yeah, definitely hopeful. We have support here, we've got support there. There's things happening here, there's things happening there. And now hopefully the world will get to see as well. So yeah.
Right, guys, thank you very much for coming. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for tonight. But to our viewers out there, thank you for watching. Until next week, that was African Voices, and have a good night.